Is she ready?
Mr. Bozen?
Here.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein? Mr. Foyce? Mr. Foyce there? Okay. Mr. Greider?
Here.
Mrs. Jewin?
Here. Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda, and I can't see it. What's up first?
Fireworks.
All right, Mr. Morrissey, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, a few weeks back we discussed fireworks, and at that time I had suggested certain amendments, and as everybody sees in the attachment, those amendments are attached for the council discussion and to move forward to the full council in a regular hearing or regular meeting to have approved through ordinance amendments in 3 readings.
I think they look good, Pat. I wish we could ban them, but this is a good set of actions short of banning.
Well, in response, Sharon, the state of Iowa has mandated by the Code of Iowa, by the law that we are to go by, that all municipalities have to sell fireworks.
Yeah.
If vendors come in and want to sell them in your municipality, which has happened in Waterloo. And short of the state could go ahead and rescind that law or change the law so that municipalities had a decision to make on selling those, but they haven't done that. And if they did, we as a city then could ban them by saying that we are not going to allow their sale here and their use. Okay, but the state hasn't taken that action. So what these amendments do is tighten up the ordinance language as we have. They improve the enforcement language, and they make it so that there's a window so that people that are buying the fireworks legally by state law, they can legally buy and possess. So it gives them that window, those 3 days, the 3rd, 4th, and the 5th, in which they can legally use or shoot off those fireworks. Without that, as we saw back in 2018, when we banned them, people are going to buy because they legally can, and they then were shooting them off against what our code language had said at that time. So I know that's a long diatribe, but it's an explanation of the thinking behind these amendments, and I would hope that the rest of the council would concur and we can move this forward to a full council for the 3 readings that it requires.
No, Mr. Morrissey, my comment on banning was I wish we could ban the use. I know we can't ban the sale of fireworks, but I do wish we could ban the use. But in short of that, I like the amendments that you've brought forward and would support them.
Right. Anyone else with questions on the amendments Mr. Morrissey has brought forth?
Mr.
Mayor.
Mr. Bozen.
On 5-213B under B, and we have rise to a decibel level and to an elevation level. Pat, do you have an idea what those levels would be?
Well, they're currently in our code under that noise ordinance that we have, and I left those open, hoping that our city attorney, Marty Peterson, could fill in those blanks with the decibel level. The elevation is something that would have to, we'd have to look at what display fireworks are versus consumer and where they at as far as elevation. So I left those open to be filled in by those that are more knowledgeable than me, Dave.
Okay, and then another question would be on the debris removal. How do we be able to enforce that when a neighbor calls in because they've got a bunch of their neighbors' debris all over their yard, their vehicles, their roof?
Well, in thinking about that, Councilman Bozen, what my thought was that if people are getting that on their lawn, they probably, or on their property, they probably are seeing the place where it's coming from, I would surmise, and therefore that would be part of the enforcement of that, I believe. When fireworks are going off in my neighborhood, I can see where they're coming from. So I will have an address.
I was just curious on how we enforce the removal of that debris. And then my last one was, and I talked to you about this earlier, but I think we should get it out before the council, because it says if to deal with rental property, especially when a tenant is firing them off, and then does the landlord get penalized because of something that their tenant's doing since they're the property owner?
Well, I believe that can be handled by the landlord requiring of anybody who's going to shoot fireworks that they have an agreement in writing, Councilman Bozen. That was my thinking of that. And short of that, I guess I would wonder, where the landlord was with his tenants and the responsibility that they have over maintaining that landlord's property.
And I just had a couple of emails from the landlord that were concerned that they were going to get, if this passes, that they were going to get penalized for something that their tenants were doing that they didn't have permission to do.
Right, and the amendments I introduced, that doesn't necessarily mean they're, the end all. It's not limited to this. An amendment to the fireworks ordinance could also include, language to the effect that the landlords who object to fireworks being used on their property should submit something in writing saying that, either at the time or beforehand. That's additional language that could be put on this, Councilman Bozen.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor. I think I heard Mrs. Klein. Did you have something a little bit earlier?
Yes, I did. I have a question about the landlord issue. It's very hard to, it's very lengthy and difficult to evict people, especially nowadays.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I can't hear her.
Neither can I, Mr. Mayor.
They can't hear me from here?
Mrs. Klein, I don't know, is the microphone?
Mr. Mayor, Chris Youngblood told me earlier they're trying a new sound system, and that if we were having any trouble with it, to let Chris know.
Do you want me to go there?
No, go ahead and try it again.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Barely.
I'm right on the microphone.
Kelly, is your microphone working?
Chris is checking it real quick.
So I can hear you, or Mrs. Klein, if you could speak directly into it. If you're not, I can't speak from here.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm right on the microphone.
Both Kelly and Margaret Klein are muffled.
I know, I'm trying to work on that. If council will give me just a second. Kelly, are you able to speak directly into the mic, or are you already doing that?
Mayor, this is Chris. Can you hear me from here?
I can hear you.
Okay, do I sound better? Louder?
We can hear you, but it sounds like you have the bass on.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, give us just a moment, if you would, like 1 minute to call in.
Mr. Ames.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that these amendments that Councilman Morrissey has brought forward, they look like they're good amendments. They look like they would work. One of my concerns with these amendments, just like the ban and everything else, the citizens are not following suit from a standpoint of the times when they should not be shooting them off. Excuse me. And the reason that, for me, the 3-day thing was to give citizens an opportunity to shoot them off in a legal time frame. And I'm looking at these, and I'm going to be honest with everyone. I haven't talked with anyone about this or anything else, but I am truly having a change of heart as far as maybe we do need to look at banning these and just going from there, and maybe forming some other form of coalition to work with the other cities to try and get the state to change their view on this. Because realistically, when you look at the statistics, it shows no matter what we do, people are still shooting them off. The only time where that number is less is when they are actually banned at the state level. You know, so I like I said, the things that Councilman Morrissey has done, those are great things. And I think if we continue on with the direction that we're going, we should be fine. But I'm really having a change of heart as far as maybe looking at a total ban, because those 3 days I thought might make a difference as far as people shooting them off in that time frame and then being done with it. That's not the case. So even that is not working. So in my mind, what I'm looking at is that total ban at the state level. And from a standpoint of us as a city council, like I said, I'm shifting my mindset back to the ban.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, thank you. Jonathan or do you have anything before we start having the second round of questions? Or
Well, I'll just say that while I was in favor of the ban, I do think that Councilman Morrissey's amendments are, for me, an adequate compromise to the enforcement piece. So I am willing to give it a try. Because I've heard from people on both sides of this issue. I'm willing to give these amendments a try through next July, and if we're back here again, then at that point I think we need to look at other options. But right now I'm fine with these amendments.
Mayor Hart,
we can hear you.
can you hear us now?
We can hear you.
Okay, how about Mrs. Klein, do you want to try and speak into the microphone?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
All right, your floor.
Great.
Your floor before we go to Sean.
Okay, well, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that Mr. Amos has been considering this. As far as these amendments go, I think they are made with the best intent, and that Mr. Morrissey's heart is in the right place to try to find these solutions when we face such an obstacle with the state allowing the sale. I think they're really well meant. However, like all of these things, and Mr. Amos brought it up, there just is no public compliance. We can put as many words in this or as many as amendments in this and as many strictures in this as we would like, but I do not fundamentally believe any longer that the people have any intention of obeying. And I believe that enforcement is almost impossible on all of the additions, well meant though they may be. If we can't take a step back and look at banning it, just banning it. That way it's so simplified. Anything that pops off is against the law. Simple, in a complicated issue and at a complicated time. If we can't step back and reconsider that, I would agree with Mr. Greider. I would support this for one trial test next July. But honestly, I don't have much hope for that.
Mrs. Jewin.
I would just say that I totally agree with what oh, are you getting that? Yeah. I don't know
That's yours.
But you were hearing me,
I made that worse.
oh, okay, now I'm okay? Okay. Anyway, I would just say that I agree with everything Mr. Amos and Mrs. Klein said. I am totally in favor of a ban, even though I recognize that we had problems even when we had a ban in place. I think we need to go after a statewide ban, just as Mr. Amos stated. And Mr. Mayor, I think you would be the perfect one to lead a coalition of other cities that are all having the same problems we are having, and get the state to ban the use of fireworks. So that's my main statement. Secondarily, I, like the others, I would be in favor of these amendments for this coming year, and if they don't work, that gives you time to approach the state as well as us adopting our own ban. But on the Fifth Amendment, my concern there is some of the problems that we had this last year. The biggest confluence of debris was at Crossroads. And how do we even know who set them off in a situation like that? So we're still going to have problems with debris, and I don't have any solutions, but
Mr.
those are
Mayor?
my comments.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, so I'm hearing a potential coalition of the majority of the youth moving Mr. Morrissey's amendments forward.
Mr.
All
Mayor?
right. Yes.
Mrs. Jewin brought up Crossroads. I don't know if this is true or not. I had heard that Crossroads was questioning the city about cleanup when it was announced that people could park there. And I was told, who knows if this is true because it's anecdotal, but I was told that the city agreed that the city would clean that up prior to the mayor's fireworks. I mean, you know, that agreement was entered into prior.
Well, there were city staff there, Wendy, and a number of volunteers that had gone out and was picking up and trying to clean up. I don't think we won't have that same problem next year. We won't have to worry about that unless people are just out there on their own accord. But I don't think we'll be dealing with that same problem next year. So, I mean, I'll look into it, but we won't have that problem next year at all. With regards to Mr. Morrissey's,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Morrissey.
well, sorry, I was on mute there, but I just wanted to add that I've heard comments about getting a statewide ban on use. Well, a statewide ban on use is not going to do any good. I mean, to me, it is sort of illogical to think that the state is going to have a law that allows municipalities to sell fireworks and then pass a law that bans the use. I don't foresee that ever happening, and I just can't see that the state legislature's going to do that. So maybe I was mistaken in what I heard, but in order for the state to ban the use, they have to first ban the sale within the state. And then it becomes banning the use like we had before the state passed a law which mandates municipalities to sell.
I think right now we have enough support to push the amendments to the agenda, so we'll go ahead and do that. And as for the state portion, I think I'm hearing next year if there's no change. But right now, I think we got enough to do what the amendment. So I would like to move that forward. And if you don't mind, should we transition to the next portion of our work session? That's fine. And that is Mr. Grider, I believe.
Yeah.
I have a daughter, as you all know, and we spend a lot of time together, as fathers are wont to do with their children. And oftentimes I'll take my daughter out on my own if my wife has to work or other things. And what I discovered in some commercial settings is that a lot of the time there are not changing facilities in men's bathrooms. And so that makes it difficult to take care of a child that is not potty trained, and makes it difficult for dads to do the essential job of parenting. And so what this ordinance would do is that it would require a changing station in bathrooms of both genders or in unisex bathrooms for new construction or significantly remodeled commercial venues. And this is just to help out parents because there was one restaurant that my wife and I would frequent that no longer is here. And they actually had changing stations in neither one of their bathrooms. And I remember one June, it was us and 3 other families changing our kids in the back of our cars. And all we wanted to do was eat dinner. And so what this ordinance would do is it would just be to ask that, or require, that commercial venues have diaper changing stations for young children. And if they have multiple bathrooms on like the same floor, that they just have signage telling parents where to go in which bathrooms would have those as a way to ease the ability for young parents to take part in our economic life while also taking care of their children.
Mr. Mayor?
Looks like Mayor's muted.
Ms. Jewin.
Yeah, I have there's several questions, and Mr. Greiner, Paul Hudding sent out some really helpful information, and looking at what other states have done and cities, it appears that most of them are doing it to federal, state, well, the feds have already done it, but state and local facilities. And I didn't check all of them, so I'm sure there's some that do private, but I do have a concern with us mandating it in private facilities. That's my first one. I totally support doing it in city-owned, with the exception, as Mr. Hudding pointed out, that the park restrooms would be problematic. My second question is, where did he come up with the up to 50 pounds? As I was looking, and it was hard to find the guidelines or the specs on the changing stations, but what I could see, it looked like most of them were 25 pounds. And so requiring 50 pounds might be an excessive specified amount for those. And so I would like Mr. Greiner's response to those two. To those two questions.
Sure, absolutely. So I spoke with Grove Cedar Valley and Main Street Waterloo, and some of them were surprised that commercial venues had not moved to this already. And so I did not hear any concerns. And again, this is new construction or dramatic renovation. This is not requiring anyone who has no plans for renovation to make any changes tomorrow. This is just new construction or massive renovations. On the 50 pounds, right, so for really young children, they're typically the 25 pounds. However, for some special needs children that are a little bit older, there is obviously a need for those as well. And in the cities that have done this, they have typically used the 50 pounds in order to not only account for very young children, but also for children with special needs who might be above that 25-pound weight limit, who still do need to be changed by a parent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mayor,
Mr. Bozen.
thank you. I just had a question for Mr. Greider, and I'm on the council liaison, the leisure services board, and they, I know it wouldn't pertain to any park restrooms right now, but it would to new restrooms. And the problem that we have with the leisure services, the amount of vandalism that we have to restrooms. And I truly feel it'd be an ongoing problem in a park restroom that would be subject to vandalism. That would be a constant repair or replace problem for the Leisure Services Department on any new park restrooms that they install. I truly believe that it's a good program, but there's certain areas that are going to be more prone to problems than others.
And I'm perfectly willing to talk with City Attorney Marty Peterson and either grant an exception for perhaps park restrooms. That certainly hadn't been something that I had thought of, mostly because the parks that my daughter and I go to, a lot of them, the one down the street from us that we spend the most time at just doesn't have a bathroom at it. So I had not considered that, but I'm amenable in order to make sure that Leisure Services doesn't waste money because of someone else's vandalism. We can certainly look at some sort of exception for that, if that makes sense.
But would it count anyway? Because are you talking about existing or new?
What?
I was talking new, sir. If we do any extensive remodeling, or if we have a park where we put a new restroom in, the way this reads, it would require us to put changing tables in it. And as I said, there's the ongoing problem with vandalism in the restrooms now on a regular basis.
Yeah, we definitely can talk about it because if it's existing, then it wouldn't be included. And I think part of Leisure Service was moving away from doing bathrooms just for the reasons that you mentioned a little bit earlier, Councilman Bozen. And then, but I would probably say if there was a place to put a changing station in from dads who take their children to parks, it would be parks. That you would want some type of changing station, but as you indicated, Mr. Greider and Mr. Bozen, if you want to get with Paul and get with Marty to kind of massage some of those things, that would be great. So
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
This is Klein.
I have a question. I don't think this is a bad idea. I just think we need to really talk about it some more. Is this a recommendation for changing tables to be in both the men's and the women's bathrooms, or one or the other, or a place in between? And if so, second part of that question is, how much would that add on to the construction cost for a small business? Would it be a tipping point, if there's only a couple of miles between Waterloo and another city? Would it be a tipping point that they would say, no, we're gonna go to the community that doesn't have all these expensive restrictions? I don't know. What's the cost involved for that? Are you asking for a changing table in both areas or a neutral area? I don't know what this really means.
Yeah, those are both very fair questions. So, and it depends on the venue. If they were to only have men and women's restrooms, then it would have to be in both of them, or at least in one set of both bathrooms somewhere on the same floor. Now, if they had a family bathroom or a unisex bathroom, as long as that was marked, that it had a changing station and it was accessible to both parents, that would be fine. The cost of these, you can find the really, really high priced ones, but a typical one costs you probably between $150 and $250, and then installation costs depending on what that is. So that certainly might be a consideration. That being said, I can tell you the money that would be brought in because young parents can utilize a facility effectively, I think would probably make up for the cost of a bathroom changing station fairly quickly. I had a couple people I know who own small businesses and who have said that the changing station cost isn't typically prohibitive. and it does create a more welcoming environment for families. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add that, and tell Mr. Greider that I am supportive of his ordinance. I believe that it's a humanitarian and a family-oriented ordinance whose time has definitely come, given what we see in many restrooms, many facilities that either have these attached to their restrooms or they have a separate place, a family restroom to be used for something like this. So I appreciate Councilman Greider's bringing this to our attention, and I hope that it gets moved to the full council in a regular meeting for us to vote on in the 3 readings that we need to have it voted on.
All right. Ms. Jewin?
Yeah, I would just like to maybe suggest that when Mr. Greider talks to our city attorney about exceptions for city parks, that maybe we need to have language in there that allows for a business to ask for an exception as well. We might have someone building a facility with outdoor restrooms that would also be subject to vandalism. So if we're going to allow exception for some city facilities, I would like to see us offer that potential exception for businesses as well.
Well,
if Mr. Greiner would just talk to Mr. Peterson about that. Otherwise, like Mr. Morrissey, I am in support of this.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Let's go to Mr. Greider right now to respond to Ms. Jewin, and then we will answer the second part of Mrs. Klein's question.
Sure. So as the ordinance is written, there is an appeal process for businesses or the Parks Department or whoever that goes that's submitted to the building official and all of that. So there is currently an appeals process. If someone doesn't believe that their business appropriately needs one, we have written in there that they can appeal the requirement. And that would have to go through the regular appeals process of explaining why and all of that. But we do have that already.
Could that then address the park situation already?
I will have to, after tonight's full council, I will reach out to Director Hudding and Attorney Peterson, and we can see.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize. This is Paul Hudding, Leisure Services Director. I tuned in a minute or so late, and the conversation was well underway. I am in no way opposed to changing stations in parks or any other place. My concern was mainly vandalism, which goes beyond just changing stations, where we have a lot of destruction that occurs. And the key is in a building that's unsupervised. For example, we have a new restroom that we constructed recently at the complex at Cedar River Exchange Park. That's lockable. If we can lock it, no problem. And I think it's great for the parents. And we have included these at the Sportsplex and Young Arena and all of our major buildings. My concern is more about, and maybe there's grandfathering into these older structures, these older brick buildings we have, maybe not. And I'd be happy to talk with Councilman Greider about that as well. So sorry for being a little late. Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Klein asked the second part of the question about do we think this would force businesses or have businesses move somewhere else? Councilman Greider, have you done any research to find out if this has had a positive impact?
So I have looked at 2 cities that did this as well. I looked at San Antonio, Texas, which is where a lot of we got some of the structure of our language from. And then I also looked at Evansville, Indiana, which is a little bit closer to our size. And there's not specific like scientific peer-reviewed data, but there were some surveys through family councils in both of those locations that did say that one, parents really appreciated the option and felt personally in surveys that they did more shopping in places that they knew were more child friendly. And then business owners generally stated that they felt that they saw more young families and that it did not have a negative impact on their business. Now, these are all self-response surveys from 2 cities, but generally what the response has been is parents like it, businesses get more customers, and it's generally a positive from the research that I have seen.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Fine.
Okay, I have another question about this. Some of my family members have owned a dry cleaning establishment. I was thinking while everyone was talking about the businesses downtown, I've utilized the ironworks. I've personally utilized Beal's sheet metal. I've, you name it, an insurance company. Think of all the businesses that don't serve food that may be impacted by this rule. People that don't really see customers. You call a plumber, you don't really go into his shop. You call him up and he comes out to your house and does what you need to have done. Is this going to impact every single business, even if they don't have any experience with customers coming in their door? Or to stay, like dry cleaning, you drop it off, you go.
This is Marty Peterson from the legal department. I can address that if it's okay with the chair.
Please do.
Okay, so Mr. Greider's ordinance addresses use and occupancy classifications A and I believe M from the International Building Code, and those businesses are, Group A is an occupancy for the use of building or structures for civic, social, religious functions, recreation, food or drinking consumption, or awaiting transportation. So things like motion pictures, theaters, banquet halls, restaurants, taverns, bars, amusements, bowling alleys, community halls, courtrooms, funeral parlor, gymnasium, libraries, museums, pool or billiard parlors, arenas, skating rinks, swimming pools, tennis courts, bleachers, grandstands. So that's most of what A is involved. And then M is the mercantile group, which includes department stores, drugstores, markets, motor fuel dispensing facilities, retail or wholesale stores, or sales rooms. So, your local plumbing shop is not in Group A or Group M, so I think we're covered there.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? Any angst? Maybe this will be something that would encourage more families to visit specific areas. So, anyone else with any questions or concerns, or want Councilman Greider look into something else with this? Thank you. And I believe next up again is Mr. Greider.
Hello again, everybody. We are in the middle of a pandemic that has lasted in the United States since the formal declaration in March. And so I am offering a resolution to the council as a whole mandating the use of masks. Iowa is one of 2 states in the union that does not cannot either have a statewide mandate or a local mandate. And we have not ever had any of those mandates. All the while, we are seeing the numbers of COVID cases slowly but surely increase, hospitalization rates increase, the positivity rates increase, even while we have struggled to keep testing rates up. So this mandate would require that people in public places, and there are exemptions in this resolution, would require that they do wear a mask. I understand that this is not a silver bullet to the problem of COVID-19, and I would certainly not suggest ever that this is the only solution in what will require an array of tools. However, what we do know from scientific studies, and I have about 15 pulled up here that I'm looking at from JAMA, the CDC, the World Health Organization, the National Institute of Health, and these are all peer-reviewed scientific journals. Wearing a cloth mask face covering or a plastic face shield significantly deteriorates the spread in a community of COVID-19. And so this is what it would do. Now, there are a couple of things that I will change before this comes to a full council. One piece is that, and I did not include it in here, is a sunset clause. Dr. Redford, who is the head of the CDC, suggests that if we all wear masks who are capable for 6 to 8 weeks, that should get us to a level where community spread is manageable so that our public health departments can really take care of the things that they need to take care of, and we can do what we need to do. So I will include, I'm probably going to go with just a 6-week sunset, and we can either sunset it or extend it, just so that we have an understanding of that. In addition, the enforcement mechanism, I want to be really clear because I've received some emails that have accused me of some things that are not in my sort of repertoire. This is not intended to be some sort of stick it to the man, throw people in jail because they're not wearing a face covering type of thing. In fact, what I would encourage in terms of enforcement is businesses offering perhaps a discount for customers who wear masks, or a drawing for gift cards, or some communities have talked about having police offer what are called in these communities citations of good citizenship for people who are wearing them, something that they can take home. Lots of states impose financial punishments on this. We look only to our neighbors to the north. Minnesota, my in-laws live there. It's a $100 fine every time you go out the door without a mask, and there's not a warranty period on that. So I'm certainly not suggesting that we round people up. Now, I have gotten a lot of questions from constituents, and they sort of come in twofold. One of them is the legality or constitutionality of this. The other question, the other types of questions are science, and then the third type are enforcement. So we've talked about the science. Scientists clearly state, including various organizations that represent 12,000 healthcare providers in our state of Iowa who have asked for a statewide mask mandate, that masks work to slow the spread of COVID-19. So the science is clear. I can't address every meme that's on Facebook or something that someone shared with you on Twitter. I can't answer those, but what I can tell you is that real science is often not found on social media. So that is that. On the constitutionality piece, I've had people tell me that this isn't constitutional under the federal constitution or under the state constitution. So I'm going to address that in two parts. So the federal constitution does not really speak to this issue. And in fact, in one of the few cases where this issue is addressed, in the case of Jacobson v. Massachusetts in 1905, the Supreme Court does state that that states and municipalities do have the right to utilize what is called their police power. And that's not the police, but it's their power to enforce certain rules for society. And this relates to a compulsory vaccination law that Massachusetts had passed in response to smallpox, and Mr. Jacobson did not feel that that was obeying his liberties. And this is what the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision that's since been upheld, states that if we are unwilling to hold in an element in the liberty secured by the Constitution that one person or a minority of persons residing in any community and enjoying the benefits of its local government to have thus the power to dominate the majority when supported in their actions by the authority of the state, this will lead to the end of what we consider to be liberty. They go on to state that liberty is not a sort of universal good, that if every person is merely a law unto themselves, then that's not liberty, it's just tyranny by each individual as a minority. And so the Supreme Court have held that there is compelling power for states and municipalities to act. Now, we have heard Governor Reynolds has stated that local municipalities can't issue a PPE requirement because of an interpretation of the Iowa Constitution. However, in 1968, the voters of Iowa, in their wisdom, passed what's called a home rule amendment, first for cities and then a couple years later for counties. And what the home rule amendment does is it allows cities and municipalities and counties to pass their own laws. They're empowered to pass their own laws that are more stringent than state law. They can't be less than, so long as they are not irreconcilable with state law. And there is nowhere in state law that currently states that cities cannot mandate a higher level of PPE wearing than what is currently being offered by state law, which does not really speak to this issue. And in fact, I'm not the only one who agrees with me because I am not a lawyer. In fact, the former attorney of the Iowa Municipal Lawyers League has stated that home rule does in fact allow these because it's not irreconcilable. And the only way that we can discover if a city or county law is irreconcilable is for the state Supreme Court to issue a ruling, which the state Supreme Court has not done on this issue. And fundamentally, I believe that all the people who contacted me, I want the same thing that they do. I want to be able to go safely to school and be with my kids in 3 weeks. I want to be able to safely patronize a business. I want to be able to do those things. However, when a small minority, as we found with fireworks, abuse the rule, it does require that we do have to step in for the safety of our community. Another 4 Iowans died today. We are swiftly approaching the 900 mark. We are swiftly approaching the 900 mark on deaths in Iowa. Like I said earlier, our case counts are rising. Fundamentally, this is about caring about your neighbor. Fundamentally, this is about doing all that we can for the people who live near us, for the people we know and don't know who would be negatively impacted by this disease. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they don't know anyone who has COVID-19, and I tell them you are extraordinarily lucky that you don't know anyone suffering from COVID-19. Right now, I know 3 people who are hospitalized because of COVID-19, including my own grandmother, because there was an outbreak at her long-term care facility. And so she, suffering from Parkinson's, is now dealing with a disease that was brought in because I believe that we did not take adequate action as a state. And I also remember the phone calls that I got when the Tyson outbreak happened and how scared those people were. And I don't want that for our families. And we know that wearing masks based on science can reduce the spread of COVID 65 to 70%. We can save lives. We can do this for our neighbors, and we can do it quickly. Again, it's not a silver bullet. It is not going to say that COVID-19 will disappear, but we can significantly reduce the spread. And so that is what I'm asking, is that we band together as a community and we do this for our neighbor, because right now the state's not. And I'll finish up by saying this. Some people have accused me of partisanship in pushing this. That's not why I was elected. I don't care what party our governor's from. I don't care what party our president's from. I agree with 45 other governors, who are both Republicans and Democrats, who have stated that masks help save lives. And that's all I care about. That's what I was elected to do. That's what we were all elected to do, was to protect and defend the health and safety of our constituents. And this is such an easy fix, that I think we need to take the steps and do what's right for our community. Because some people will not act until we mandate it.
Any questions, council?
Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
What you doing?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, let me start by thanking Mr. Greiner for bringing this forward. I am 150% in favor of this action and appreciate the research he's done, and I appreciate all of his comments. Personally, this is a very real issue for me, and I've seen too many people that aren't wearing masks, even when they're supposedly required. So I thank you for this, and again, totally support it. In fact, some of the people that didn't see it, there was on the front page of the Courier yesterday, a lot of doctors in front of the state capitol asking the governor to do this exact same thing. So I agree with Mr. Greiner, we have to follow the science, and the science says that the masks will help. So totally in favor of it. My only question is, Mr. Greiner, if you've heard, has the state taken to date any action against Iowa City, who has already enforced this ban?
No, I reached out to my colleagues in Iowa City, as well as the mayor's colleague in Muscatine, and as well as the Johnson Board of Supervisors. They have not heard anything from either the state attorney general's office or the governor's office, other than public press comments that those offices don't think that it's enforceable. So there's been no legal action taken against those municipalities or counties.
Again, thank you, Mr. Greiner.
Mr. Ames.
Yes, Mayor. Councilman Greider, I commend you on what you are doing here. You know, I myself, when I step out of my vehicle to go into a store, the pharmacy, or wherever, I always have a mask on. I'm emphasizing that to all of my grown children to do the same, especially if they're going to be around me. And the bottom line is the citizens out there that are against this, whether they think that it is against their rights or not, what about the rights of those individuals who had the potential to be infected with this disease? So for me, I support what you're doing 150%, just like Councilwoman Juan, and I hope the rest of us council members do this the same way.
Thank you. Council?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Morrissey?
Yeah, Councilman Greider, a couple questions. First of all, you had mentioned about possibly adding something like maybe a 6-week sunset clause. Exactly what would that mean? When would it start? And how would it be determined that that sunset clause was terminated? Because I have a difficult time seeing how that would be accomplished short of making this a mandate until such time as Public Health Department has stated that Blackhawk County, state of Iowa, is ready to discontinue a masking mandate.
And I'm willing to look at any language that my fellow council members would like to send. I know, for example, Iowa City, it states that I think it's September 15th, unless rescinded earlier or extended. So they put in a specific date based on when, and for them it was their mayor signing something, so ours is a little bit different, but it's from when it went into effect, and then they just calendar dated it out. So that is what I was thinking on the sunset clause. It would allow us to just naturally let it, because here's the thing, is I am in no way suggesting, as some have suggested that I am, that I want us to wear masks forever. I don't. I want us to wear masks while there's a pandemic going on. And so I just want to make that clear to our citizens who might just see the headlines or might just see something and think, oh my goodness. I want to be respectful of the fact that this is not going to last forever. Well, hope that this will not last forever. And so that's what I was thinking, Councilmember Morrissey.
Okay, and so Jonathan, the whatever language you put there will have a statement to the effect unless an extension of this or change of this is necessitated. Yeah, that effect. Okay. Okay. And secondly, in your the resolution that you drew up, which is very well worded, and thank you, Jonathan. In section 1, it says every person in the city of Waterloo must wear a face covering when, and then A, in public as opposed to one's place of residence, when one cannot stay 6 feet apart from others. Is that, by that wording, in fact, mandating 6-foot social distancing as well?
I guess inexplicably, because we know that it spreads through aerosolized particles that are bigger than the 0.005 microns that masks offer. What we're really trying to get at is, like, if you're going for a run, and there are exemptions to this, and I do want to clarify that. But if I were to go out for a run, okay, that's maybe a bad example because I don't run. But if someone were to go out for a run, and they're just passing by people, they don't need to wear a mask, and that's in there. But it's when 6 feet is not possible, because we know that based on CDC, WHO, NIH, White House guidance, that when you're in that 6 feet window, that's really when it can get heavy when people are breathing. But there are exemptions. So if you're younger than 2, so I will say that my 2.5-year-old can wear a mask like a champ. If you have trouble breathing, or if you're on oxygen therapy, or have a personal ventilator, like those things, if you're unconscious, incapacitated, or can't remove a face covering without assistance, we're not going to make you wear one. If you have a medical note, a legal note, or a behavioral health note that a face covering would cause you to relive trauma or would impact the health condition you have. Obviously, we want to do what's best for the community, but we're not going to mandate that someone that wearing a face covering might cause them to relive a horrible event or exacerbate a medical condition. We obviously don't want that. And then it's not all public places either. Like if we go to a restaurant and we're eating, wear the mask in, wear the mask out. But if you're eating, obviously you can't wear a mask, right? That would be difficult. Where it's forbidden, if there's a service that would require you to temporarily remove that mask covering. I know some people, if they're getting a haircut, it might require them to temporarily remove it. If you're exercising, like I talked about, if I'm out with a walk with my family and it's just the 3 of us, well, 3.5 of us, that's fine because you're all in the same unit. So it's not like I can't go out on my patio in the backyard and I have to wear a mask. Like that's not what we're mandating. It's really in the public settings where distance can't be maintained, where they're enclosed spaces, that we just really want to help people understand that this simple piece of cloth or a face shield can really help. If that answers, that's a long answer to your question, Councilman Morrissey.
Yes, thank you. The question had to do with, doesn't it by reference basically mandates 6-foot social distancing, and I think you answered that very, very lengthy. But Yes. And then next, Mr. Mayor, a couple questions for you. Do we have, does the city have in place, is it currently in effect, a mandatory masking when one enters City Hall?
Yes.
And so my question is, if you have to wear a mask when you enter City Hall, do you have to keep that mask on the entire time you're in City Hall?
Yes.
Are you in City Hall?
I'm also not around somebody that's 6 feet away from me.
But my question was, are you required to keep that mask on while you're in City Hall?
If you are not able to socially distance, yes, so a person coming in from the public would have to wear a mask. Majority of the time they're in here, they're next to someone, they're asking questions.
So if you get in City Hall and you practice social distancing, you can take that mask off, is what I'm hearing you say.
No.
No?
You walk in City Hall, you need to have a mask on to be in City Hall.
Okay, unless you're in a meeting or something, or what?
Right now, if a citizen comes from the outside, you must wear a mask in City Hall. Staff, if you are within 6 feet, or you're passing by, or you're going to another office, you have to wear a mask. That is internal policy.
And how is that enforced, Mr. Mayor?
No shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service.
Okay. And who will be monitoring that? Do you have any idea?
Staff. You won't be served. So you go up to a desk, you go up to a front desk, or you go to an office, and you want to get a service, you won't be served.
So if I come to City Hall for a council meeting and I'm sitting in my chair, I should be wearing a mask.
I mean, what does this have to do with what Jonathan is proposing?
Well, because he's mandating masks. His resolution does.
Citizens outside, if you come in here, you have to wear a mask. And if you're talking about a situation where Mrs. Klein, who is an elected official, who is sitting over 6 feet away
Mr.
from
Mayor?
Kelly, yes.
I'd like to weigh on this because, of course, it's targeting me. This is exactly why I can't support this sort of thing. This is what it causes. It causes people turning in their neighbors, parents turning in their children, children turning in their parents. I believe that the citizens of Waterloo are doing a great job. I have just now completed walking Ward 1 and Ward and Mr. Morrissey's ward. I have bumped into people that are absolutely dedicated to living in a safe manner. But what they don't like is a high-handed, you're going to do it or we're going to turn you in. I have a mask here, Mr. Morrissey, but I am also a good 20 feet away from people, 10 to 20 feet away. And I choose not to wear it.
You're out of order. Mr. Morrissey, finish your comments, then we'll go to Mrs. Klein.
How can I be out of order?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to assure you, I don't know if anybody in council chambers has a mask on or not, because the picture on my phone is so small that I don't even look anymore because I can't see who's there, okay? So this was a question just to clarify and I take it was your proclamation regarding wearing city masks in City Hall, because I saw it there when I went there the other day to pick up my mail. And I just wanted to ask if it was in effect and if it was being followed, and if so, who's going to monitor it. So the last thing is, and I hope that Jonathan's resolution passes, but passage of that measure carries what kind of weight and with you or with, the ongoing measure existing, and should maybe it become part of an ordinance, even as temporary as it might be?
That's up to Mr. Greider's discretion. Mr. Greider, have you talked to the city attorney yet about this?
I will be asking him some questions. We have had conversations about this. I do want to just say that the intention is not for people to turn other people in, as is being suggested. The intention is to encourage people, and that's why I left the enforcement up. And I'm hoping for positive enforcement because we know that works better. The intention is not to turn people in. The intention is that we know in public settings, but people are 6 feet apart or less, that they should just be wearing a mask. Now, that is what it is. I'm not playing gotcha. And I've received a fair amount of hate mail this last week. I'm going to guess that I will receive a fair amount the other week as we debate this. And that's fine. That's what I signed up for. And I'm aware of these things. But I'm not here to play gotcha. I'm just here to help people take care of their neighbors because this is happening.
Mr. Greider, so you answered that question. You'll be reaching out to the city attorney, Mrs. Klein.
Mr. Mayor, number one, I have to ask you why you admonished me when you initially recognized me. I don't believe that was fair at all.
Mr. Morrissey had the floor.
Maybe so, but you recognized me.
He had a series of questions.
That's true, but you recognized me.
And you kept on, and I tried to intervene a couple times.
Part of that is hearing. Part of that is hearing.
I don't want to get sidetracked from the issue. The issue on here is face masks. The issue, I don't have an issue with Mrs. Klein. I have a decent relationship. The issue is the face mask. So all of you, don't turn your attention to me. Let's stay on the face mask.
All right.
Mrs. Klein,
that was my first comment. My second comment was, you clearly know, all of you clearly saw what just happened. That was directed directly at me. I realize that it irritates some that I come in person to these council meetings, but my experience with Zoom was very poor, and I believe it has to do with the connections in my condominium association. I could not effectively participate in this meeting from my home on Zoom. Plus, we have had such serious flooding, and those folks wanted to come here and be in person, and my heart says that if they're brave enough to come out and be here in person, then by golly, I have to be brave enough to sit here face to face with them and accept what they had on their hearts. That's me. I'm not accusing anyone on the Zoom meeting of not fulfilling their duty. You all have health issues. You all have personal issues that you're working through, and that's what I respect. I respect anyone's desire to take care of their own safety. What I balk at is, and I've experienced this, I've received emails and phone calls from people who are turning in their neighbors. I had one today about a golf outing. Someone was reporting a golf outing. It's just so hostile. It's like, if you're not doing what I'm doing, then you must be wrong. And that's not true. I believe we are all trying to the best of our ability. And as much as I do now believe that Mr. Greider's heart is in the right place on this, I just think it adds weaponry to those who want to be mischievous against their neighbors. And we've all bumped into those people. We just bumped into one now.
Mr. Mayor.
First of all, is there anyone else that would like to comment on the issue at hand right now? We've had to speak. Is there anyone else that would like to comment before we come back to Mr. Greider?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Bozen.
Thank you, sir.
I'm in favor of this mask requirement. I truly believe this pandemic has been mismanaged from the very beginning, even on a state level, or I wouldn't be the lowest rated pandemic performance of all 50 states. And if the state would actually step up like the other 45 states did, we wouldn't be having this discussion. The problem is that anti-maskers are as adamant about this as anti-vaxxers are. Enforcement is going to be extremely difficult unless we're just strictly looking at we're asking people to do this and strongly encouraging it, because you've got people out there, and based by the emails that I've been receiving, that you're never going to force them to wear a mask. So I hope that we can work those issues out and be on a more encouraging recommendation type of a system, because I really don't think we're going to be able to enforce it. That's all I have, sir.
All right. Anyone else before we go to Mr. Greider that didn't speak yet? Mr. Greider?
So I firmly get what my colleague from Ward 1 is saying. And in normal times, I'm a pretty live and let live type of guy, for the most part. The issue is that what we know from COVID is that it is most spread by pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic carriers, meaning people who are not showing symptoms. So it's not like, oh, that guy's sneezing a lot, I should probably stick away, or that woman has a lot of stuff coming out of her nose, let's steer clear. It's spread by people who don't even know that they're sick. And that's why we are asking. Now, I am certainly more than willing to look at all of it. And I want to make it very clear for anyone in the media or anyone who's watching this at home or in the chambers, I want to make this very clear. My intention has never been to make this some sort of punitive action. And if people are doing that, I want you to just take a breath and do your own thing. That being said, wearing a mask, a simple piece of 50-cent cloth to protect your neighbor, to protect your husband, your wife, your grandparents, your children, the guy down the street, the guy who lives 50 blocks from you, the woman who lives somewhere else who's coming through Waterloo. That is what we are talking about. We are talking about helping people. And I understand, like with any legal law or anything that we do, that there will be people who do not follow it. And that's fine. We have mechanisms to deal with that. What I am just asking the city is to step up and wear a mask, because that's not being asked by some of our leaders. We need a little bit stronger push. That is what this is doing.
All right. So, Mr. Greider, you will be reaching out to Mr. Peterson, and probably would like to have a conversation too. But the thing that I want to bring back to everyone is the enemy is not the council person that we choose to be representative body of this community. The enemy is not necessarily even the people that tell on others, or that the enemy is the virus. And if you are someone who knows for a fact you've had relatives that are impacted, it's hard to right now sit and say whether or not, because we all know someone that has been impacted, and we all may know a person or two that have lost their lives behind this virus. So this time is one of the most challenging times we've ever had in this country since March, because what do you do? What don't you do? How do you do it? When did you do it? Should children go back to school? Should they not? Should you enforce a policy internal? Should you enforce a policy external? But the enemy is the virus. And so the more we can move away, and I'm not saying anybody specifically, away from the politics and more towards the protection around those that we live with, that we work with, that we call our friends and our relatives, the more that we can do to protect our community, the better off we'll be. But in your mind, the virus is the enemy, not each other. How we get there to having a virus-free community, we may not agree with that approach, but I think we all agree that people in this city, across this state, across this country, have been gravely impacted. So the virus is the enemy, not us, not one another, the virus.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I had one other question that I wanted to ask Councilman Greider, and that is, how does this apply to public and private schools within Waterloo?
Yeah, so it would, I mean, the way it is currently written, and I know through my other job that this is a conversation that's being had with the district, but the idea is that masks will be part of the requirement. That's what we have seen so far in the return to learn plan. This is in places where 6 feet can't be maintained in enclosed spaces or outdoor spaces where that 6 feet cannot be maintained. That being said, I can only go off what is public knowledge in the return to learn plan. And based on the articles that I've seen, I know that masks are definitely a conversation that they are having as well. But that is what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? All right. We will, Mrs. Jewin.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion been made with the second. All in favor?